Hello and welcome to this episode of Voices of Fostering. And today we're going to be focusing on how important it is to look after yourself as a foster carer. And to do that, we're going to be chatting to one of our lovely social workers. So I'd like to introduce Stephanie. Hello, Stephanie.
Hello, Helen. How are you?
I'm okay. Yeah, are you all right?
I'm good. I'm good. Nervous about today. It's
Oh,
not
no
not
worries.
not not part of my usual daily tasks.
It's just a nice informal chat. We'll just pretend no
Yeah,
one's
those things.
listening, okay? So, firstly,
Wonderful.
Stephanie, I've been reading a little bit about you, and it seems that being a social worker was always written in the stars for you, wasn't it? So, tell us about that.
Yeah, yeah, it definitely was. So, there's a bit of a standard joke in my family because everyone's either a kind of social worker or a teacher. Both my parents are social workers, my aunt's a social worker, my cousin's a social worker. Yeah, there is a lot of us in that field, and alternatively, people are teachers. So, yeah, I didn't ever actually start out wanting to be a social worker. I'm totally honest. I always wanted to go into clinical psychology.
Okay.
Um, so that's kind of what I started doing as part of my undergraduate course.
Yeah.
But also did English on the side, just because I enjoy reading. And as kind of time was going on, I started volunteering with Childline and was really enjoying it and really enjoying that direct work with the children that were phoning. And I suppose it got me thinking, actually, I really enjoy this. And I think at that point, my mum was in children and families as well. And she kind of put the thought in my head of, well, why don't you retrain as a social worker?
Yeah.
So that's kind of what ended up happening.
And why do you think, Stephanie, that your family have ended up being social workers and teachers? What do you think it is? Is there just a real streak of empathy running through your family? Do you think that's what it is?
Yeah, yeah, possibly. And I think us social workers and teachers all probably come from quite a grounded value base, I suppose.
Yeah.
And I think when you're then raised within that, it then creates those values that you take into adulthood, where you are kind and caring, respectful, compassionate, empathetic towards other people. And I think that then, I suppose, then you're drawn to more the caring professions.
Yeah.
So I think that's probably had quite an impact.
So, can you tell us about the role of a social worker within fostering and in the National Fostering Group? So, what is it that you do?
Yeah, so I am obviously a supervising social worker now with the National Fostering Agency in Scotland. So my job really is to support foster carers. That would what I would say is first and foremost. I do that through a variety of ways. It can be, during we do monthly supervision with all my foster carers. That can be virtual or it can be in person. I quite like to get along to see my foster carers because I think you have a wee bit more of a meaningful discussion whilst you're, sitting around somebody's house, because you can pick up on so much more in terms of non-verbal cues. It's much easier if I was sitting here and actually inside I was thinking, oh, I'm not having a very good day. You might not see bits of that, but actually if we were in
Yeah.
person, you'd probably pick up on more of that. So yeah, that's a big part of my role, is keeping in touch with the carers, making sure that they're feeling supported. And, sometimes it's about, I feel like in social work, you're a bit of a jack of all trades. So you can be doing referrals, you can be maybe speaking to the children, engaging with foster carers. So yeah, it's a really, really varied.
Yeah. So, what we wanted to really talk about today was carer fatigue. So, can you tell us what that is and what that can look like?
Yeah, of course. I will, absolutely, full disclosure. Please know I am by no means a psychologist or a psychotherapist or anything like that. But I suppose just from my experience, what I've seen as a social worker, I would say probably before we get to compassion fatigue, the step before it's kind of burnout.
Hmm.
So burnout, the way I would describe it, is a bit of a depletion of our energies, and I think a lot of the literature and things breaks that down into kind of four main categories of where we get our energy from. So that can be your kind of physical, emotional, mental, or social. Um, we hear all the time people saying, "Oh, my social battery's just drained. I just need to," if you've had lots going on, and you're interacting with people, you sometimes do need some downtime. And I think probably as a society, we're quite good and we're really open at saying, "Oh, social battery just drained. I'm done."
I call it when things get a bit too peoply. It's like, it's a bit too peoply. I need a bit of time to
and
myself.
You're like, yeah, I'm just not, do you know what, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to rearrange the lunch with my friend or whatever it might be. I would describe your mental capacity as maybe that when you're learning, when your brain's really engaged and you're learning a new skill or taking on information. Physically, again, that could be both internal or within your body. Do you know, it's that about, when you've maybe been eating too much fatty food or sugary food and you get the slump, or, if you are working out at the gym and you lift a weight and you get to a point where you're shaking and you can't do it anymore and you drop it. So there can be signs, like we're probably a lot better at discussing those things. But we can experience emotional burnout as well. So that's where I would say compassion fatigue would sit as a bit of a subcategory of burnout. That's probably how I would describe that. Compassion fatigue is...
tell us about that.
It's really, really, we see it a lot in the caring professions. So that can be foster carers, it could be social workers, it can be your nurses, your doctors. I think certainly kind of post-COVID, what we were seeing was obviously a lot of doctors and nurses were really feeling that, given what they were dealing with in their day-to-day role. It was horrendous, but what that means for you when you're the person experiencing that is that it's a very visceral feeling. I think it tends to happen for people who are particularly empathetic towards other people. When you start to really feel what other people have experienced, especially their trauma, you can feel that too. And it can sit with you. It can sit with you emotionally and mentally and physically inside your body. And I think if you aren't able to process that, either be it, especially I suppose for our foster carers, if it's with their supervising social worker, if it's with accessing the clinical team within the group, it can really, really start to affect you negatively. It can affect your body. It can affect your ability to connect with your young person or with other people. It can be quite a profound experience. I think something that not everyone is aware of at the time when it's happening until probably you're starting to see those quite negative feelings.
Yeah. So when have you experienced this within foster carers, Stephanie?
So I would say I'm trying to think of a time where I have experienced it. I think there's probably been little moments where quite a lot of my foster carers have experienced that. And what I would start to see is that they start to become a little bit maybe more irritable with that young person. And again, it's not to throw any judgment about that at all, but it's a kind of natural part of that process of your body's basically saying, I'm full, I'm at my emotional capacity, I don't have anything left in the tank. So what that then happens is that we can become more irritable. We can stop maybe looking at that child through that therapeutic lens and start to be a bit more critical of what they're doing, what they're saying. And it's just because you're feeling burnt out. And sometimes it's about then supporting the carer to talk about it. Tell me that kid's annoying you today. Tell me how you're feeling. Because then if they can kind of release some of that tension, I suppose it metaphorically allows a bit of that emotional cup to start to empty a little. So when they go back into that fostering role and trying to connect with that child or parent them, whatever maybe is going on for them at that point, that they've got a space to do that.
So how can we sort of look out for this and, I suppose prepare for it, and what are the flags, what are the sort of markers that it's happening, and how can you manage it?
Yeah, so I would say things like, as I've probably kind of commented there, things like feeling a wee bit more irritable, not feeling quite yourself, maybe not having. I would maybe frame it as know your window of tolerance. We all have one. So sometimes, you might start off with your window of tolerance is like here. And within that, you've got a kind of reactionary period, and then you've maybe got withdrawal. What can happen is that your window of tolerance starts to get lower and lower and lower. And it allows the space up here for more reactionary, irritability, anger, frustration to start to kind of overtake, or you start to get withdrawal. So I suppose that they can be the signs. Everyone's really different. I would love to sit and say, here's a blueprint for what compassion fatigue will look like, but I can't give you one. What it is about the carers knowing themselves as well. And I suppose you, as the social worker, if the social workers are listening to this, it's about them knowing their carers, knowing what their baseline is, and know when you're starting to see that they look like they're struggling. And it can be things like physically you see them, looking just, their shoulders aren't as back as what they normally are. And that's what I'm saying. Seeing people in person is great if you can. But you start to see that they're withdrawn, they're burnt out, or, they're irritated. And it might not just be with their foster children, it could be with their partners, with a dog, because the dog's constantly under their feet. Because again, that window of tolerance has gotten shorter and shorter. And I suppose sometimes part of our role as social workers is to look at how can we extend that. Mm-hmm. That can look a variety of things. It can be, organising a short break. It can be increasing kind of calls with the carers and supervision, or referring to the clinical team for support. So, that's probably how I would describe it.
So I was just going to say, what's the way out of it then? I think a lot of the time talking, isn't it? Just talking about how you feel can be transformative, can't it?
Oh, absolutely. And I think it's great because we do have the clinical team that can be there for the carers as well, to give them that space that is away from the social workers, away from the child social worker, away from the child or their partner, or it could be, couples could do it together. So, I would definitely think if you can speak about it, please do speak about it. There's a massive kind of area of what's called containment within psychology that, and that's exactly what it is. You are not taking away the situation, you're not changing that, but what you are doing is validating and containing somebody's feelings and holding space with them so that then they can go back and keep doing their job.
Yeah.
What I would say, everyone is really different. I don't know if we're able to, I did send a link before, but if we could pop down, there's a bit of a tool that you can use. And it's a bit of a traffic light system of, when I'm at green, I'm doing really well, whatever keeps you well for you, that might be for some people, that might be about connecting with friends, or going out in nature, or working out regularly, having family meals, whatever it might be. That might be how you would identify that actually things are going really well right now. And I suppose try and be mindful of, why is it going well? What are you doing? What supports are you getting? And what are you possibly delegating out to others that they can do to support you to stay well? Moving down that might start to be, if you come to Amber and you think, oh, I'm just really tired just now, I need an early night. That might be what then puts you back up into green. Or I'm feeling a bit disconnected, I'm really struggling, I'm going to phone my social worker today and get a bit of advice, because that's that, a child or young person said something, or it's not sitting well, or it could be anything. It could be how you access charms for some carers, because it can be tricky at times. Whatever it is, whatever your worry is, I suppose it's about what can you do, and then how can we support you back to being your best version of you that you can be, which is where kind of we would sit with green. I'll be really honest, what I would say is not very often do we sit in amber, or we do, I'll rephrase that. We do sit in amber for quite a while, but we don't always know the signs that is compassion fatigue and burnout until we dip into red. And that's when, as I was saying before, that you're maybe not sleeping, or you are disengaging a wee bit, or you're starting to struggle with what you're dealing with on a kind of day-to-day basis. And that's the point, that if you feel like you are sinking round about you, have a bit of a plan of what do you need in those moments. And it needs to be about not trying to rush through that process, because I think when you are in burnout, you're looking up at yourself and remembering yourself when you were in green and saying, I'm never going to get there. This is too hard. I can't do that, which just then perpetuates what's happening when you're in complete burnout and compassion fatigue and block care and things. So I would then, if you can, either within yourself, and try to do this when you are in your kind of green zone, I would say, is, look back at a time, because we've all had them. We've all had periods of time where we go, oh, I've nothing left to give right now. I need a break. I need time. I need to, go for a walk, whatever it might be for you that helps you. But try do your plan when you are in a good place, because when you're trying to create a plan, get back to green, because we are inherently impatient by nature, or at least I know I am, that's too hard to do. So yeah, if you can create that plan that's for you, it might be about phoning your supervising social worker, it might be about, asking for a short break, or reaching out to family members, or going for a walk, having time to yourself, whatever it might be. I suppose it's always about what would work for you, and what do you need to do to support yourself to get back into that state of feeling good again.
Yeah. I think it's important to remember, isn't it, Stephanie, that to be easy on yourself, really, because as a foster carer, foster carers aren't perfect people, they're not,
none of us are.
They do, exactly, none of us are. And I think it's about remembering that we can all struggle, and that's okay, isn't it? And it's all right to reach out for the support.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's so important to do that, is be honest, be open. And, it doesn't mean that you're not good enough. It doesn't mean that you're not doing your job as a foster carer. When you say, this is really hard and I'm really struggling, I think we've all done that at various points. And, whatever your career or your background's been before fostering or as it is now, speak to people, let the people know around about you and in your team what's going on for you, because there'll be something that we can do to offer you a bit of support, even if it's holding space with you and saying, this is rubbish.
Yeah, and we'll help you through it. Yeah. And, we've talked about the struggles today. Obviously, there are struggles, there are tough times, but you must have had some really rewarding points in your career with foster carers. Are there any that stand out,
Do you know, I can't, this is going to probably sound awful, but I don't have like a singular big moment.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that's just the way I interpret things, but I would say there's been little moments, because also I've only been in fostering for about the last year. So what I would say is there's been little moments probably with each of my carers that I will look at and think, oh, I'm really proud of them.
Yeah.
They've done really well. Do you know, it can be just, as I say, such little moments after supervision where you start to see their shoulders and they're really apprehensive, and you leave and you actually see how light they feel, and you think, ace, that's great, they're ready to go back into this. It can be about supporting children who've maybe never been on a train before or on a plane, to have their first experiences, and they're the things that I suppose I hold dearly to me. It's never ever been about what's this big thing that this one carer has done. I think every carer has done something really magical for a lot of our children, and I'm really grateful that I get to see that and witness it so closely, because they're the memories that hopefully our young people will carry with them forever.
Yeah. And your social worker family must be really proud of you, Stephanie.
Yeah, I hope so.
Well, it's been wonderful to speak to you today, Stephanie. I think there's some really, really useful advice in there. Some really interesting talking points, and that tool that you talk about, we'll put that in the bio for this podcast, so people can use it. So just to finish, really, if anyone listening, I imagine a lot of people listening today might already be a foster carer or might be a parent, but there might be some people listening who are considering fostering. What would you say to them?
I'd say just do it. Do it. Reach out to us. You will be It is tough. There's no getting away from it. It is tough at times, but it is really rewarding. It really is. You get to genuinely really make a difference. And I know that sounds probably a little cheesy,
Not at all.
but you do.
Yeah.
You do. You get to really make a huge impact in our children, young people's lives, and for some of our most vulnerable children and young people. So, yeah, I would say, pick up the phone, speak to somebody, and yeah, take it from there.
Thank you so much, Stephanie. It's been wonderful to chat to you. Thank you so much for joining us for another episode of Voices of Fostering. If you'd like to get involved in the conversation, we would love to hear your questions. Maybe there's something you'd really like to ask about fostering. Get in touch. You can email us on podcast@nfa.co.uk.